a strong Jewish community, her desire to help people live their lives to the fullest. All of this really stems from the story that she's going to tell us tonight. And I don't know how my experience of Shirley compares to other people's experiences, but I would guess that most of you know, at a basic level, that she was born in a DP camp and that her parents are Holocaust survivors. And maybe you've heard a little bit about some of the trips she's made, but Shirley actually really hasn't stood up and told her story in front of a group until today. She started with the JLC kids after serving for so many years as our vice president of education. And now she's going to be telling the story tonight. So I was thinking to myself, before I go there, I wanted to know one other thing. I'm curious, by a show of hands, how many people here are in the second generation? Second generation, okay. And how many people here were born in a DP camp? Okay, and how many people here identify as being in the third generation?
I'm the only one.
Also, Rita, did you raise your hand? Interesting.
Third generation after the Holocaust, the meaning.
Yes, the third generation after the Holocaust. So I wanted to say one more thing, introduce Seema, and give a blessing. I think there's a way in which, for the last few years, we've been opening up storytelling to the second and third generation because there are fewer and fewer survivors among us. And often, the second generation and the third generation tell the stories only of their parents and not their own stories. And it's as if like we're settling to hear the second generation or the third generation in acknowledgement that there aren't many Holocaust survivors left. But I think tonight is really about acknowledging the importance of the stories of the second generation themselves. I want to introduce Dr. Seema. She's going to say her name properly, but Velkovich, who's here from Israel this year as a visiting scholar at NYU. Her scholarship in sociology and history focuses specifically on the second generation after the Holocaust. And she is a guest scholar this year at NYU's Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism. She and Shirley will tell you exactly how they connected, but it was Shirley's idea to bring her here. And we're going to get tonight both some history and context and Shirley's personal story. So the last thing I wanted to say is I was thinking, is there a blessing that you say on the occasion when somebody tells their story for the first time? Is there such a blessing? Shehechianu. Exactly. But I was thinking, right, you can say the Shehechianu kind of anytime you do something new, right? And this is the first time among your friends and relatives, even if you told the kids, right, your first day telling your story. But the words are about being sustained in life and enabled to reach this moment. And so I think they're particularly poignant to be told by someone who's telling a story about the miracle that they were born into this world in the first place. So I'm going to recite the Shehechianu. You can join me, and then we're going to turn it over to Shirley and Dr. Seema. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction, and thank you for having me today. It's an honor to present together with Shirley, who is an amazing person, and we will tell the story of DP-born babies. It was baby boom just after the Holocaust. This is a topic, I'm sorry about my voice, I just losing it more and more. This is a topic of my PhD dissertation. And I'll present in general about DP camps and phenomenon of DP baby boomers. And Shirley will tell the story of her family and her own story, and will present you amazing items which she brought today for you to show, which she kept them from DP camp. It's original items. Okay, so just after the Holocaust, Allied forces organized DP camps in the territory of occupied Germany, Austria, and Italy. So Germany, Austria, and Italy were countries of perpetrators, and they were occupied by the Allied forces, which are Americans, British, French, and Soviet armies. So these countries were divided for 4 zones, and immediately after the end of the war, there were about several million people, different ethnicities who were wandering in this area in Europe without any desire to go home. Majority was sent anyway home, for example, to Eastern European countries, but there were several hundreds who stayed in that area, and they were organized as displaced persons in the camps. Majority of camps were in American and British zones. In the beginning, Jewish people were put together with non-Jewish DPs, and it was really a problem because many of these non-Jewish DP were former collaborators, and there were really difficult situation with Hungarians, Polish people, and so on. In September 1945, American's president emissary arrived with an inspection, and he wrote a report and that Jews are in very, very bad conditions in American zone. So since October 1946, Jews were separated to separate DP camps where were only Jews, and they received kind of independence because it was possible for Jewish organizations to arrive there, to organize help, to bring funds. So JDC, Joint Distribution Committee, took significant part in that. There were also volunteers from Jewish brigades from Palestine. There were also volunteers who arrived with Jewish Agency for Israel. So the life started. So that's the beginning of the story. So let's speak about numbers. In the beginning, when the camps were only organized, there were about less than 100,000 Jews in the camps. But in 1946, the majority of Polish Jews who survived and who were in the territory of former Soviet Union, we are speaking about 230,000 people, repatriated back to Poland, did not stay there, and moved to displaced persons camps. So in 46, they arrived to DP camps, and the number of population increased dramatically. And also, one of the important facts that in the beginning, in the camp, there were only young people. Those who survived the camps, ghettos, or were in hiding, they were approximately the age of between 18 and 39, the age when people the most strong, maybe, that had most opportunities to survive. There were no any baby. There were a very small number of small kids, and there were almost no old people. And only after arriving this big wave from Soviet Union, there were the entire families, because people left there with their grandmothers, and there were also children who were born in the entire Soviet Union during the war, so there were also children who arrived. But anyway, you need to pay attention to the age of Holocaust survivors. It was the age of getting married and giving birth. So the conditions in DP camps were let's say different in different places. In Italy, majority of DP camps were in the former villas of Italians. So they were rather pleasant spaces on the seashore. The conditions not always were very good, but still it was kind of sanatorium, let's say this way, for Holocaust survivors. And also the relationship with Italians were rather good, and even Jewish people had some sport events together, and they helped Italians because they were very poor in many places in the south of Italy, for example. In Germany and Austria, the relationships were very complicated. First of all, even because of the language, because there were really perpetrators. There were people who 7 months ago were Nazis, and to be in such surrounding was really difficult for many of survivors. And we need also to mention that many DPs try to make Aliyah to arrive to Eretz Israel illegally and until the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. And after arriving illegally to the shore of Haifa, for example, they were catched by British authorities and sent to Cyprus. And in Cyprus, there were internment camps, and there were about 50,000 Jewish survivors who left DP camps illegally, arrived to Israel, and were taken to Cyprus. So you can see here the photograph from Cyprus camp. The conditions there were really bad. And I even have a testimony of our Holocaust survivors who she was in Auschwitz, she gave birth in DP camp, and when she arrived to Cyprus, her memories about that were that the conditions were, for her, it was worse than Auschwitz. From one side, it's strange to hear. From the other side, we need to take into account that she had a baby already. She had responsibility for this baby, and she wanted to save her baby. So this is how she remembered when I interviewed her several years ago. She died, unfortunately, already. So as I told, the conditions were different. Anyway, all this area in Bavaria, it's a very beautiful area. It's very beautiful nature there, and people were, these places, returning to life. It was process of rehabilitation, and all these small babies were part of this process of returning to life. So being at the age of getting married, very quickly, Holocaust survivors started to find their couple. Sometimes there were really strange marriages. People knew each other about several weeks, 2 weeks or something. There were marriages that would never happen before the war. It could be a distant relative, it could be a former neighbor from town from where they came or something like that, people who spoke the same language, or who, for example, sometimes it happened, but it was rare when Polish Jew married a Hungarian Jew, because of, it should be also culture, mutual culture. So anyway, people married very, very fast. There were several marriages a day sometimes, and you can see here a photograph of one of the marriages. I didn't tell about that. So you can see here, just for example, several documents. Ktubah, you know what's Ktubah, right? Marriage certificate. And there were also non-religious marriages, and you can see here civil registration. But majority of survivors wanted to get married with chuppah, even if they weren't religion, because for them it was kind of continuation of Jewish tradition, of Jewish people, and the majority wanted to have this event. And you can see here the photograph of chuppah. And one thing is very prominent in this photograph, which maybe you pay attention. There are no any old people there. All the people are the same age. These are survivors who became friends in the DP camp, and they supposedly didn't know each other before that. And this is very typical for this period. So I'll read you one quotation, maybe this way, quotation from the interview of one of the former baby about the wedding of her parents. Shortly after they met, they got married. Two people without a family, no mother under chuppah, no father, no brother, no sister. Friends who might have been called that, people who met just before that. There was no wedding dress, no veil, everything was improvised. The girlfriends took a tablecloth and cut it into a veil, took some flowers and cut them into a bucket on the head, and had for my dad. And there was a wedding, and my mom said this wedding was happy and sad, but that's what it was. So it's really, we can see it exactly on the photograph that there are no any relatives, and it was happy, but of course it was sad because everybody wanted their parents, their family to share this happy day, but what it was. So speaking about mothers, about with Holocaust survivors women, we need to remember their physical condition after being several years in the camps. So I'll present you one more quotation, but we need to remember that they have lost a lot of weight. They were very slim, and there many couldn't have children, and there were many who were afraid to have children after the experience. But anyway, in general, majority of people wanted to have children because this is about future. This is about hope, and this is about future life and returning to life, and returning to life not only personally, but also returning to life of Jewish people. I wanted to show you, if I'm speaking about giving birth, this is registration book from maternity wing at the hospital in Bergen-Belsen DP camp. And it's always amazing to see when people find themselves registered, the hour of birth and the details of parents, and it's always very, very touching, because I work in Yad Vashem and archives, so when I meet people who find details about that themselves, it's always very emotional and touching. So you can see also birth record. There are a lot of materials in the archives that we can see, DP cards, and I wanted to show you just to show how it's amazing, all this material that's I'm sorry, you don't see, right? Because I'm moving. Yeah, materials in the archives. So JDC, Joint Distribution Committee, worked hard in these DP camps and made a lot of photographs and footages. The goal was to present it in the United States in order to fundraise money. So that's why we have a lot of photographs in private hands in the families, but also in the archives. So you can see here, for example, I just cut a small piece of footage about a baby from Bergen-Belsen camp. Yeah, and usually there were JDC volunteers. Bergen-Belsen was British zone. It could be also brigade volunteers from Israel. And of course, you can see a lot of amazing photographs just to understand how beautiful this phenomenon, how many hope and life in these photographs after the destruction and after the Holocaust.
Can you go back one?
Yeah.
Somebody here was born in Landsberg. Who was born in Landsberg?
Yeah.
There's a Landsberg baby.
Yeah. Maybe you are one of the strollers. Yes, exactly. So I want to speak about Zionism here, because Zionist ideology was very strong in displaced person camp. First of all, it was brought from Israel, and also in displaced persons camp, there were many young people who were Zionists from Eastern Europe, who were Zionists before the war and who didn't have an opportunity to immigrate before the war. So they still hope to immigrate to Israel. At the same time, majority of people, if we see their DP cards, mentioned that the desired destination is Palestine. I hope everybody understands that Palestine was speaking about British Mandate Palestine, which was called until 1948. So they wanted to arrive there because, yes, they were Zionists, but there were also people who didn't have another opportunity to leave Europe and to arrive to the place of permanency, or a place where they wanted home, they want some stability, they wanted something permanent. So one of the researchers, Gitlavsky, he called it functional Zionism, because it is Zionist, but sometimes it is because of circumstances, not because of ideological thoughts. Anyway, majority of DP camps mentioned they wanted to arrive to Israel. And who were my interviewees? So I interviewed people who were born in displaced person camps in Italy, Austria, and Germany between 46 and 52, because actually after that there were almost no DPs in Europe. majority left. In the 52, remained only one DP camp, Fernwald, and the majority of inhabitants were non-Jewish refugees already. Here you can see two of my interviewees. The both of them named Rivka. They are first cousins, named after their grandmother, who was killed in Auschwitz. Their mothers were twin sisters who managed to escape, managed to hide their being twins, and Mengele did not take them into experiments. So they survived Auschwitz. They got married and arrived to DP camp in south of Italy. And the girls were born with a refresh of 2 days. And they always say, told me a funny story, because those who received in delivery rooms, they were nuns in Italy, in this area. So one mother arrived, gave birth, and in 2 days arrived the second mother and told you, but you were here 2 days ago. And actually they were twin sisters. So these two first cousins, they grew up as sisters. They're always together. Both of them Rivka, named after killed grandmother, and I'll speak about that also. But maybe I'll mention it now. It's a famous Ashkenazic Jewish tradition to name baby after their dead relatives. So the second photograph is actually when they celebrated 70th birthday in the place of their birth. And they were not only them, there were a group of Israelis. They found about 120 people who were born in the same hospital in the same place in the south of Italy. And they traveled, many of them traveled together to celebrate their birthday there, which was an amazing event. So now we are closing to our topic today. The only museum in Germany today at present time was opened in 2018 in the place which in the past was called Fernwald DP Camp. Today it's a museum called Badehaus Waldram. It's a small place, small town, Wolfratshausen, is 30 kilometers from Munich. This is local initiative of local German people. They fundraise money, open museum. Majority of them are volunteers. They want to commemorate local history. They want dialogue with Jewish people, and they're really doing amazing work at present day. So you can see here also this building of museum. During the DP camp, this building was, it's called Badehaus because it's bath house. It was a sauna there and mikveh. When people arrived to DP camp, this was the first building when they entered and went through the process of to enter mikveh. So as I mentioned about south of Italy, there is also one DP camp museum there, and there is an amazing film. To tell the truth, I don't know where it's available in the United States, but this is a film about 3 women who were burnt there, and it's called in English "Shores of Light," but in Hebrew it's called "Or B'Ktzeh Hamagav." That means it's light on the boot. It's really in the south of Italy, and they went there to search where they were born. They found nuns who helped their mother. They found local population. So it's an amazing story. And this is also the only one museum there. All these stories started to go up, to rise in Israel in 2015, when it was the first Congress in Tel Aviv University, first Congress of DP children. There were 1,200 participants there who suddenly discovered this is not something strange that it's written in birth certificate that somebody was born in Italy when his parents were from Eastern Europe. So they discovered people from the same camps. They discovered the pictures of their parents in the photographs of other people, as actually Shirley also discovered. And since that, they realized that this is really a phenomenon, and they started to organize themselves. In Israel, at present day, there are associations and groups of, according to camps, and there is a group called Fernwalders. So one of the very special topics of this, what these people do, they want to commemorate the memory of their parents, and also to transmit the memory to the next generation. And one of very dear people whom I interviewed, and unfortunately Shoshana died 2 weeks ago. Shoshana Belen, she was born also in Fernwald. She told during the interview, we are the children who were named after the relatives who were murdered are actually memorial candles. So we call it living memorial candles after the researcher Dina Vardy. And the reason is that all these babies who were born in DP camp, they grew up fast. They became support for their parents. And all of them received the names of their killed grandparents. And they started to be the permanent reminder for their parents about killed relatives. And in their life, they took on them the responsibility to implement dreams of their parents for themselves, but also for these relatives who could not have an opportunity to implement their dreams. So you can see here also pictures of Shoshana when she stood near the building where they lived in DP camp, and also she points herself in the photographs of the exhibition in the museum. Now, if we're speaking about Fernwald Museum in October, last October, it was an amazing ceremony there. There were celebrations of 80 years of establishment of Fernwald DP camp, and your amazing friend Shirley participated and for the first time presented publicly her story, very shortly and briefly. But anyway, now we know also that originally Shirley's name was Shandel, and she was named after her grandmother, right? From mother's side, both grandmothers. Shandel Rivka. Yes. So, and also you can see that her parents wanted to arrive to Palestine, and her father signed her card in DP camp. Yeah, Fernwald. The family left for United States in 1951. And now I want to ask Shirley to present her story for you. Oh, okay, thank you.
First of all, I have to say hello to my sister wherever she is. She's online.
Okay, me too.
She got sick. She was supposed to be here. So, hi, honey. So I was Shindel Rivka, and my sister, who is often known as Anita by Americans, is Hani. I also want to welcome my cousin Teddy, who I babysat for his whole early life. I'll get to that part of the story. My name is Shindel Rivka. Whew, the easy part is over. And I am named for my two grandmothers. When I was a baby, I didn't know people had grandparents. I just didn't know that existed. I knew you were named for your grandparents. And so I carried that as very important. And let me step back and tell you why we came to America. My father, my mother, they were committed to coming to Palestine. And if you look closely at those papers, we were people without a country. That's what you have to remember. They survived, and it was a miracle that they survived. And I know there are many of you here who have those stories. They survived, and they had no country. And so if people say, were you born? And I'd say Germany, but I wasn't born in Germany. I was born in a camp that happened to be an American camp. and I was an alien resident. I was born in a German hospital. The camp had a little hospital. I was born there. I can't tell you how well I was taken care of. It was amazing. Because they made do, because I, like those other baby boomers, babies, we were precious. We were precious. And so we were the miracles arising. My parents were left without family. My mother's brother helped save her, but her sister, her brother, her mother were not saved. They died in the ghetto. My father ended up in Russia. He was in the Polish army. He was conscripted, drafted, and was wounded and he thought this was his secret dream, he thought going into the army, he would be able to make his way to Palestine. That was their reason for going into the army. And he went into the army, he was drafted, he went, and of course he was wounded. And so I have a picture of him in the army hospital, but he couldn't get to Palestine. My father makes his way back from Russia, apparently picked up some girlfriends along the way. He was very good looking, and comes back to his hometown. He knew his sisters were gone. He knew his parents were gone. My father is one of 4. He had 3 sisters. He makes his way back. He is walking through the town. At the train station, my cousin Teddy, waved, Ted. My cousin Teddy's grandparents, that's my father's aunt and uncle, and Teddy's mother, my father's first cousin, were getting on a train to go to Fehrenwald. They had relatives in New York, and they got passage, because you had to get passage to go to Fehrenwald, right? Everybody couldn't just show up and say, hey, take me. You had to get passage, and they were going to Fehrenwald. And there was my father. And I remember Teddy's mother said to me all the time, she said, my father saw your father. And he said, go look at Gushta, Teddy's mother, and see if she recognizes you. It was one of those moments of, I guess the only word is beshert, but that was the moment. And so Teddy's grandparents said to my father, you're coming with us. We lost a son. You're coming with us. This is how they rebuilt families. That's what this is all about. It's about rebuilding. And they said, you're coming with us. And my father said, I have this girlfriend. That was my mother. She was adorable too. And my mother was alone. I said, what were you doing? And she said, well, I was in a city. I was doing this and that. I mean, talk about the essence of wandering Jews. They had no roots. My mother went back to her old town. It was horrible. Somebody lived in her grandfather's house. She couldn't have it back. It was horrible. So Teddy's grandparents, I called them my aunt and my uncle. They're my father's aunt and uncle. And his mother, they took my mother and my father with them, and they all went to Fehrenwald and lived in one room together in Fehrenwald with somebody else who became a good friend. And so my parents actually were probably among the very few that had older people at their wedding. They had a wedding. They had a Jewish wedding, and then they got German papers. Yes, thank you. You fill in the words for me. Which was a different date, which would have been a little too late for me to be born. And I would say to my mother, when did you really get married? It didn't matter. And so my parents lived with my father's aunt and uncle and my cousin in the camp together. And my mother swears that until I was a year old, she was not allowed to carry me because I was too precious to let this young woman who, was weak carry me. They went to America because my father's... Oh, can you hear me, hon? Wherever you are. Sorry about that. They went to America, and we stayed in Fehrenwald. We did not have passage yet. They left in 49. We were still in Fehrenwald. And then my mother and my father's aunt, they colluded. They went back and forth. My father wanted so much to go to Palestine. He'd wanted to do that since he was a teenager. And my mother and his aunt went back and forth, and his aunt said, "Now I have a family." And we came to America. And we came to America, much like many of you. They had an apartment. All of us lived in the apartment. Teddy's mother was like my big sister. I slept in her bed. She was about 19 at the time, right? 19. And I was 3, and we shared a bed. It's a good thing I didn't wet the bed. But we shared a bed, and I followed her around. And I remember that vividly. I remember being so excited to have an older sister. By the way, her Polish name was Guszcza. For her entire life, she was known as Guki, because that's the best I could say when I was a year old, and it stuck. So my poor cousin, who was quite lovely, was known as Guki. We lived in that apartment. We finally found an apartment in the same building. So we moved next door. My sister was born in the new apartment. And then this is, there are things you remember. But I wanted to own my family. I wanted them. Guki met a man. And I declared that she couldn't marry him. You know why? No, he was from Brooklyn. I didn't know where Brooklyn was, but there was this, and I'm sure, I should go back to my therapist, but I'm sure there was this thing of having to keep everything tight, right? You don't want to let go. And so I said, "You can't marry him." And he bought me toys. He bought me toys. And they married, and guess what? They moved into that same building. They moved into the same building. Guki and my mother and the families lived next door to each other until my mother died. I, of course, had the honor, because one didn't say no. That's another thing about being a child of survivors. You don't say no to the grown-ups. I was the oldest of what then was 5 children, because we all lived in the same compound, and I took care of all of them. Teddy and I, every Friday, were sent out. They used to make the challah themselves, and they stopped when my aunt died. So Teddy and I were sent out when I came home from school to buy the challah at the neighborhood bakery. And like there's so many stories you all have. What I live with, yesterday we went to Delaney Hall. Delaney Hall is a detention center. Audrey was there with me. And I saw the immigrants going into the tent or getting ready to go to see if they could visit their family in Delaney Hall, I just wanted to sit and cry. Being an immigrant when I was growing up was a secret. I became a really good US of A New Yorker. I didn't tell my story because it was embarrassing to be an other. You know, I learned to speak English better than everybody in the family. Teddy's grandfather used to tease me until he died when I was in middle school. I think it was middle school, maybe high school. I spoke Yiddish to him. When he died, I said, I'm done with this, folks. And so my parents spoke Yiddish to me, and I spoke English to them. Probably worked, sort of, for all of us. It's not easy to be an immigrant. What made it work was the strength of the family. What made it work was being so loved and adored. What made it work was Teddy's mother, who came, she didn't know very much English either when she came, but she was the modern one who would be pushing me to get out there. That's what made it work, you know. It's kind of cute. I got to write my own excuse notes for school. The camp that I'm learning so much more about now that, all right, I'm going to tell you how I got to the camp. The first way I got there was my parents gave birth. Okay, so that was my first visit to the camp. And I'll stop in 5 minutes, I promise. David and I, the guy over there, did a lot of traveling in Europe when we were after we got married, we camped, we traveled. My parents said, "You're going camping?" That was not a Jewish thing to do. We traveled through Europe. We didn't go to Germany because I carried this incredible belief that if I got out once, I say, thank you, God, and never take the risk again. It was so deep in me that I couldn't even imagine. We literally did a big circle. We went to Scandinavia, not Germany. Fast forward, I am a full-fledged American New Yorker. You can't tell, I don't have an accent. My mother does, but you know, we sort of ignore it. And I start working with a consulting firm. And they say, we need a female, a mature female. I was mature. We need a mature female to go do some work in Germany. I said, I don't do work in Germany. I'm an independent. Thank you very much. I'm not going. And they kept calling because really it wasn't me they needed a mature female to round out the team. And David, hotshot over there, hadn't been to Germany either. He said, oh, go, the war's been over for 60 years. I was afraid to tell my mother that I was going to Germany. And so I went. And I can tell you pretty much details of every program I've done, because I get into it, and I can't tell you a thing about that program. I did it. I came home. I said, see, because that's the other thing about being a child of survivors. You don't shy away from tests. You step into it. You step into it. The other thing, by the way, is you fix everything. Right? You can't leave things broken. You fix things and you meet the challenge. And I said to David, see, I did it. I'm done. I'm done. Well, they called me again. And they said, oh, well, the next program is next. I said, I'm not going back. They said, well, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't say to a client, here's Shirley. You say you want Shirley to come back, and Shirley says, never again. So guilt is another thing we carry. Right? Anybody share my sense of guilt? Yeah, you don't have to raise your hands. I know you all here. And so I said, sure, I'll go back, hoping that they would then not like me. And I went back. And we got there early, and this is, okay, talking about the world, in a place called Veldefink. What was Veldefink? Another DP camp. I didn't know that. And there I am in a Siemens conference facility in Veldefink, which is also just, I don't know how many miles from Fehrenwald. It's very close. So I go back, and Andrew and I are setting up the room, and we're trying to get everything ready before we start. And the one person in this conference center who does, if you've heard this story, stop me. But this one person in the conference center who doesn't speak English is the housemaid, and she wants her room. It's time for her to collect stuff in the room, and we need a little more time. So Andrew says, talk to her. I don't know why he asked me, but he's talked to her, because we fix everything. And so I used my 10-year-old children's Yiddish, and she used her German, and I negotiated another hour. Andrew was so proud of me, and I'm like, oh, shit, right? And then we have the big closing, the opening dinner that night with our German clients, and I'm sitting there thinking about, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And Andrew's telling this story about how Shirley got us more time by speaking Yiddish to the housekeeper. And I thought that I was going to fall through the ground. Actually, I wanted the ground to open up and let me fall through. I really did. I was so scared. 60 years I hadn't told anybody, except my two friends who met me when I came to the Bronx. Nobody knew that I wasn't from the Bronx. It's really crazy to carry around stories like that. And we do. We carry secrets, and they're really deep, and they're hard. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm hoping, I just can't wait for all of this. Then they laugh. That was a funny story. Ha ha, you know, Shirley got something. And that was it. And this was my one big step forward. I went up to one of the senior people, one of the senior clients, and I said, Thomas, so now you know my story. I don't know what he really knew, and he said, yes. He said, I don't know what made you agree to come. I am so grateful that you did. And Thomas and I, so that was 2006, 7. Thomas and I have remained friends all these years, and he actually came to the opening of my DP camp. My DP camp. Fast forward years later, so everybody then started to, take on the search for the camp. You couldn't find the camp. The camp was buried with a new name, a new town, and I didn't have a place of origin. It was crazy. I really wanted to be from the Bronx. I really wanted, I just wanted that because that's a real place. Anyway, I found my place through a whole series. In 2018, David, my sister, and I traveled to Fahrenwald to go to the DP camp that has now been turned into a very beautiful, very precious museum. And some Germans who decided this was important got that piece of property back from the church. So the DP camp, the Jews get cleared out by 57, 50, no, oh, 50, when they closed it. Yeah. Then they brought in Eastern European Catholics. Here's an interesting story about the DP camp that you'll appreciate. There was a very big, tall building on the camp we just had when we were there. And that building, so the camp was a barracks for forced labor building munitions, creating munitions. There was a munitions factory off the premises, and on this land was the barracks for the forced labor. The Germans made this look from the skies, from the heavens, like a sweet little village, so it wouldn't be bombed. So there was even a building that they put a cross on. The central building, they had a cross on it, so it wouldn't be bombed. So there was one big building there, which was Hitler's stage, his auditorium, where he made his speeches. When the Jews arrived, and the other thing the Americans did with this camp was they made it self-governing, which made it a very hopeful place for the survivors. They took on roles. They were the fire department. They had a whole village of administrators. Sam's father was one of the administrators. Anyway, this big building that was Hitler's became the Große Schule. You should know that there were 3 synagogues on the camp. 5,000 Jews, 3 synagogues. We've been back now. That same building, which started as Hitler's auditorium, then the big synagogue, is now the church, repurposed. The one message that I would leave you, and then I know there are many of you have your own stories. What's fun about this is I used to be the only DP person, and I look around and there are a bunch of you here. You know, DP or children of survivors in different ways. What was amazing about Fahrenwald for these young people was they could start to heal because people believed their stories. People understood. They didn't have to explain. They didn't have to explain what numbers meant. People understood. There was not a question. When we came to America, people didn't understand. The story was, don't say anything. Nobody wants to hear that story. Keep it to yourself. Get a job, go be healthy. It wasn't so easy to be healthy. And what I think is really important for me, the work I do, is to remember that being a refugee in a new country is freaking hard. You know, unless you come from somewhere with your family fortune and you have the estate back there and you've got an estate here, but that's not the refugees that we deal with, that we were. It was hard. Money was hard. Language was hard. I didn't understand this. My mother's neighbors didn't think she was very smart, right? She was amazing, but she didn't speak English. She spoke 6 other languages, but she didn't speak English. You know, and so when I stand today, when I go to Delaney Hall, I remember how hard it is. But I don't want to end on that note. I want to show you the cutest thing, and then I want to open it up for any of you. I'll pass the mic around. This is a velvet dress, handmade by my mother, hand smocked, hand embroidered, perfect sleeves. The workmanship on this is extraordinary. She made everything. Of course, I didn't learn to sew because I picked up the needle and she said she'd do it for me. And this was the only time I ever told people I wasn't American, because this was so cool. My parents became citizens within the first 5 years. They could have let me become a citizen when I turned 18. Instead, they took me downtown and I got my own citizenship papers. I do believe that I had to answer some questions like who was George Washington, but I went back to my 5th grade class with my citizenship papers. And everybody wanted to know if they could get some too. And it was like, no, I'm the only one. I'm the only one. So it's a journey, guys. So I think for me, it gave me strength and fear. So thank you. You all have stories. Does anyone want to just, yeah, David? He doesn't have a story.
I just want to start by saying how incredibly proud of you I am. But the other thing is that it's amazing how her life came full circle, starting outside of Munich, coming to the Bronx, going all the way around, getting dragged against her will back to Munich to work for Siemens, and forming these incredible friendships with the Germans, and in that company, who she started to refer to as my Germans. She always referred to the Siemens crowd as, these are my Germans.
I have very few memories, but one of them is my parents lost their parents in the Holocaust. My mother's father was killed in a police station in Berlin, and my mother's mother died in Kovno. And my father's parents were killed in Riga. And they rarely ever spoke about it, except every time I asked my mother about her parents, her eyes filled with tears. And every time I asked my father, he didn't really talk about it until 1970 or so. There was a big a series called The Holocaust on television, and it kind of opened up the subject for discussion across the country. And I kept asking him all these questions, and he said, I want to answer, but I can't. It's too difficult. So those are the memories that stay with me.
My mother actually recorded one of the Spielberg tapes, but she didn't want my sister and I in the room because she didn't want to upset us. The sense of loss is deep, and the sense of trying to protect us is even deeper. Anybody else want to? Marshall, I'll bring you that. Please.
Many of you know my father, Eric Singer. Oh, sorry. He came over when he was 9 years old. I kind of wrote a short prepared speech, so I'm going to read it. It says, Eric Singer came to the United States in 1938. Okay, sorry, in 1938. Okay. In 1938 on a ship to New York. It took him a few weeks. His father, his mother, and himself, and they all were seasick for about 4 weeks. His first address was 16 Sickle Street in Brooklyn, New York, and he attended grade school, and they had an ESL program. He hardly spoke a word of English, and then he's apparently quite bright. He made it into Brooklyn Tech. Max and Hella Singer, those were my fraternal and maternal great-grandparents. They were urged several months before that they must leave Germany because something terrible was about ready to happen. And it's a good thing they did, because a year later, after they came in October of 1938, was Kristallnacht. They had a very hard time finding a sponsor. Some of the relatives that were already here in the States to bring them over. And finally, one of his cousins brought him over, and the family. So they were very fortunate. As a student in Germany, he was harassed and given failing grades simply because he was Jewish. And for years during the Nazi uprising, he had to be escorted back and forth from school to avoid being bullied and attacked. And he also made mention to me, well, for us rather, that when he was about 6 years old, he called it the honor of raising the Nazi flag, because had he not done that, you can be 100% sure he probably wouldn't be alive today. And that's about it.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Marshall. Those of you who were fortunate, like me, to know Eric, knew of his incredible dedication. He kept this building standing, single-handedly. Eric was one of the many Shomrei gems. I have to tell you, I came on the boat too, Marshall. I was so sick. I was 3 years old, and they took me away and put me, and this is the only story my father told me, they put me in the infirmary. And my father sat by my crib and cried. And he said, "This is why I came to America, for my child to die on a boat?" I didn't die. And I got off the boat, and Teddy's mother, Gookie, bought me chicken soup. It works. It works. Who else?
Well, I lived in Feldafing 5 years. I'm one of those children who was born in Russia, who came to Feldafing. I really appreciated your talk, because I don't hear too much about these DP camps. It so happens I remember Feldafing because I came to the United States when I was 5. We lived in a house. But the interesting thing I want to say is that I usually can be heard. One of the things that's so interesting is that my mom, the youngest of 11, she had 2 surviving brothers. Somehow they all found each other in Feldafing. And I have a picture of my cousin who survived Auschwitz, another cousin who was born in the DP camp, and another one. I have 2 cousins who are younger than I am. So there's a picture of the 4 of us, the only family that's left, but I have it. And also, my mother dressed me beautifully. I can't tell you the clothes I had. She started a really bad habit. I just want to tell you. But she dressed me beautifully.
We need to compare. Okay, can you all see this?
My mother was the best.
See this blue coat, the fur collar, and the what?
Right.
My mother says she dressed me from sacks to bed. This is a coat that must have come in a care package. It
So I was raised, I was born in February of '46. And the DP camp that I was in was called Neufreumann-Siedlung. I don't know if Serafima's familiar with that or not. But it was close to Munich. I'm told that I was the first Jewish baby in that German hospital where the nuns had these huge hats, you know, with the wings. And one story that was told was that they were quite surprised because I had this very tiny little pointy nose. In any event, my mom was from Budapest, my father was from Czechoslovakia. Somehow they got to this DP camp. Getting to Palestine was not easy. My dad was deliberating, go to Russia, go to America. He had a half-brother in America, and that's how we got to America in '49, also in a boat in October of '49. So I was 3.5. I'd learned German. I was fluent in German. I learned Hungarian as well from my mom. That's the language they didn't want me to understand. Well, I speak it, and I know it, and I got my dad's talent for languages from him. In any event, for me, the interesting thing was that when I was 18, I had no compunctions about going back to Germany. I was more curious because somehow or other, even though they were in a DP camp, in the summertime, they managed to go to a beautiful place called Walchensee. I don't know if that was anywhere near your camp, but it was a beautiful place. I have memories of feeding chickens on a farm, sledding down a hill with my mom. And when I was 18, after high school, I went back to this little town in Walchensee, which was still a little town. I have the black and white postcards, and when I went there, they were now in color, same scene. I met a kid named Peter, my age exactly. I probably played with him. But I know what you mean about fear because I was hitchhiking then when I was 18, and one of the cars that stopped to pick me up was this long black car, and a guy in a long black leather coat got out. And I was thinking, am I getting in this car or not? But I did, and I had some good memories from the camp. You know, the kids I played with, it was good. And then we came to the States. The rest is history. Yeah, we have 2 kids, 6 grandchildren, and we have a legacy as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my mother was not in the DP camp, but one stop in her odyssey was in a building airplanes in an airplane factory, and she was so excited when she got a drill and a pencil, and she also had the fashion thing, so I guess she needed the pencil to measure where to drill the holes, but she would draw dress patterns on the wings.
My mother was teaching sewing in Fehrenwald. They had classes that were sponsored by the Joint, and they took pictures so they could come raise money. So my mother became a sew. She didn't want to sew, but her sister sewed, and then the skill did her very well. So she had all these patterns from Fehrenwald, which I then brought back and gave to the museum. So now it's part of their archives. But it was, it was a moment. She loved her little Joint card that said, "You are a sewing teacher." Oh.
Okay, thank you. My father was from Latvia, from Libau, and my grandfather could have been one of the richest, definitely was the richest person in Libau. He had a department store. and he could have been one of the wealthiest people in Latvia. And he went to Palestine in the 30s twice to buy, and he bought land. Unfortunately, and he was going to move there. Unfortunately, his brother was one of the top lawyers in Berlin, who told him that Hitler was just a passing fancy. So he went back from Palestine to Latvia. My mother was from Poland. Just as a quick side note, when I was in the Holocaust Museum, I was in the library and reading some books. And I was reading a book, and it was in English, on the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and the guy who started it. And he said he started it by having a meeting at 11 Pavia Street, and that was my mother's address. So, but my mother was in Siberia. The Russians at some point said, if you're from Poland, you could go back to Poland. And if you're married, you could take your family with you. So my father said, we're going. And he was in Poland. He made some connections with the underground to go to Palestine. He was in the woods waiting for the bus to come. The Polish soldiers came, put a gun to his head. Fortunately, he had enough jewelry to buy his way out of it. And then they went further on. When he was in Austria, because I was born in a DP camp in Linz, Austria. He also found some connections to go to Palestine, but he couldn't make the bus. My mother was sick. She may have had morning sickness with me. My father fortunately spoke English very well, German and Russian. My mother spoke 5 languages. English wasn't one of them. But my mother could make friends with anybody, and she did. And she was working in the, I guess you want to call it the hospital in the DP camp, and she discovered quickly that the doctors were not doctors. Remember, nobody had any documentation. So somebody said they were a doctor, so my father found a way, when my mother was ready to deliver, to go to a Catholic hospital in Linz, where she knew there was real doctors and real nurses. And that's what I was born. And then, interestingly enough, I'll just leave one note. We came here, and we ended up in Jamaica, Queens. And my mother couldn't speak English, but her best friend was from Greece, who couldn't speak English either. And all she spoke was Greek. And I still don't understand how they communicated. Yet they understood everything that they were saying. But
thank you so much for sharing with us today, Shirley. Real quick, I want to say, I also have a Siemens story, and that I also went to work on business in Siemens in Munich and later Stuttgart. And I went with a friend who was Israeli named Peretz, and we were walking over this big green area in between the different office buildings, and there were large vents on top. And Peretz told me that his mother had been a slave laborer in an underground factory there. So that was our Siemens story. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yep. Okay. The other thing I want to mention is Dr. Seema, I know, is giving a talk on Sunday for the Jewish Genealogical Society of New York on this similar subject. And on that, I want to say I've been doing Jewish genealogy research on all the branches of my family for a number of years now. And one of the most satisfying things I've ever done has been finding these elderly relatives in Israel who thought they were the only survivors of their family, and to be able to give them extensive family trees showing, with your grandson is my 5th cousin and things like that. Fortunately, I've been able to collect a lot. So I want to suggest that if there's anybody here who wants help in tracing their families, Yad Vashem has a lot of stuff, records. The Jewish Genealogical Society of New York is very active. They'll be happy to help you. And if anybody wants to contact me directly, please do.
Thank you for that. I wanted to say just that there were also another type of family in the DP camps. My father was a much younger survivor. He was 18 at the end of the war, and there was a couple, Martha and Alec, who were a young married couple in their early 20s, and they took in 4 teenage boys as their sons, and they formed a family unit in DP camp in Germany, and later lived in Holland together. So I would have never really understood that without this incredible historical background that you gave, Dr. Sima. We're so grateful that you traveled into New York and from Jerusalem, ultimately to be with us. And Shirley, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, and everybody who shared their stories. I hope this will be an inspiration for all of us to welcome the stranger and to hold our families close. Have a good evening.
If I can ask those who were born in DP camps to talk to me, I will be happy, first of all. And the second thing I wanted to tell that I think it's really, really important to tell these stories to your children and grandchildren. Please don't keep silent, and at least write down what you know about your family history.
I want to just give 2 quick announcements. This coming Sunday at Shomrei, there's an opportunity to participate in Mitzvah Day in the morning to do all kinds of different community service projects. And the following Sunday in the afternoon, we'll be hosting Sera, who's a former speechwriter for the Obamas and has written 2 compelling books on anti-Semitism and on treasuring your Judaism. So there's flyers around if you want to come back for more.
And tell your stories.
I'll give you my card, please. I know there are some.
I wish I knew which DP camp my father was in. He didn't talk that much about the DP camp experience. You can remember the last time we'll have lunch.
I'll give you my card, Stanley. Just a second. Sorry.
Are you associated with Yad Vashem?
Yes, I'm just on vacation and I'm visiting school in NYU for 3 months. But yes, I'm working there more than 20 years.
So my mother volunteered with Yad Vashem. She worked with Yad Vashem as a witness. And she took the military to
You're from Israel?
I'm from Israel.
את מדברת עברית? יופי, את יכולה לדבר עברית.
בטח. אז היא עוד חיה, אמא שלי בת 96 היום.
היא בארץ או פה?
היא פה, אבל עכשיו היא בפלורידה.
אבל בארצות הברית, לא בארץ.
היא לא, בגיל 85 היא חזרה לארץ. היא גרה בירושלים. הבת של בן דוד שלי עבדה ביד ושם. יעל, אני לא יודעת מה השם משפחה שלה, שהיא נשואה.
הבנתי.
אבל היא עבדה ביד ושם, היום היא עובדת במשרד של הנשיא, היא מארחת את הפרשה.
אולי אני רוצה, לא יודעת, ככה לא עולה לי.
אבל היא ניהלה את הטיולים של הצבא.
אני מארכיון, אני לא מה שקשור לסיורים או הדרכה, אני לא קשורה לזה.
אז היא סיפרה את הצבא, המשטרה.
כי אני אחראית על טיפוס גניאולוגי, מה שקוראים לו. אמר על המפגש גניאולוגי, אני אחראית על גניאולוגי שם.
אבל היה לנו קרוב משפחה מצרפת, שהוא עבד ביד ושם, התנדב, הוא אסף את כל השמות של אנשים מהונגריה ששרדו.
מי זה?
השם שלו בהונגריה הוא אישה, רוט, או ניקולס. הוא נפטר, הוא היה מבוגר יותר, אבל הוא עבד ביד ושם בספרייה שלו. הוא עבד בהונגריה גם כן, למצוא את כל השמות של אנשים שהיו בהונגריה לפני המלחמה. אני מדברת יותר מדי שבועות, ויש לי נפות, אני מאבדת קול לאט לאט. כן, אז היא גם כן הייתה בגרמניה בשתי מחנות עבודה, והפכו אותם למוזיאונים. אחד היה בתוך מנהרה, בתוך ההר. איפה? קוראים לזה קאוקה וסקלקה. איפה זה, את יודעת? לא זוכרת. עזבי, לא נורא. אני הגעתי לשדה התעופה, עשיתי טיול איתה, כי הם הזמינו אותנו לדבר עם לפני הקהל. מדהים. בשתי מקומות. והם הפכו את זה למוזיאון. בגרמניה זה מטופל טוב. כן. הגעתי לפרנקפורט, שאלו אותי במכס לאיפה את הולכת, אמרתי, פורטה וסקליקה. הוא שואל אותי, זה בגרמניה? כי זה מקום קטן מאוד שלא יודעים על זה. זה היה מנהרה בתוך ההר. כן, הם עבדו ככה, נכון. זה היה מפעל של 7 קומות. I'm sorry. That's okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Ragiyut. Maya asked me to talk to you. Maybe on Zoom or how. Yeah, I'll write down your number or email. You have a card maybe, or what is comfortable for you? Okay. So let's. Oh, call me. But do you have WhatsApp? Because I have Israel number.
I have WhatsApp. I don't know if there's. Do I need internet here?
No, you need to save me first.
No, just.
No? Okay. +972. Okay, I don't answer, but I'm saving it. Peter Glick. Great, I'm saving. I'll be in touch if I can. I'll be happy to talk on Zoom or how. Thank you. Thank you so much. Конечно. Москвы. Speak Yiddish. But if I would meet you in Israel, I would think you're Russian speaker. I know. I'm sorry, I don't know. I hope it's not weird.
No, I know I have that look, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Raised in Polish, my family.
But you were born where? In Ural, in Siberia?
Not in Siberia. You know, the Jews, when my mother got out of slave labor camp, they went down to summer months.
Of course. Of course. But where you were born? In Samarkand? Oh, okay. Where were you? Yeah, so your husband has my, what's your name? Toby. Send me a message. I can search for you for documents. Are you good? Do you have a card? Yes.
Maybe not in the Russian part, maybe in Vietnamese.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, not at all. I'm just very interested. My son is a history teacher, and he does a lot of a public school right here in New Jersey.
Yeah.
He's passionate about this kind of research. Not necessarily, he should have come tonight. I summer to see where my great-grandparents lived and then eventually died in the Lubbock ghetto. But he's done a lot of research. He invites people to his high school, and he had someone who liberated Dachau, who was a 100.
I'm leaving in 2 weeks already. I'm finishing.
But you're connecting. But
I can present.
You're on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
No, WhatsApp I don't have here. I'll give you my personal. I'll give you my personal contact.
You know, we have. He's done a lot of research. Quick story. My aunt and my father were born in Berlin.
Oh.
They were able to get out right before the war. My aunt is 13 years old. She's on her way to school, and she sees the kiosk, and it says in German. I'm sure she sees a picture of her father. Oh. And it says, "This Jew defiles German women." Is der Stürmer. Do you know der Stürmer? Yeah. My son, she told me the story. My son picked up on it. This is now 70 years later. He went to the Holocaust Museum and he found the Der Stürmer article. Yeah, finally found it because nobody, she kept telling the story and like nobody really, how could you prove it? And he went to the Holocaust and found it.
Yeah, of course.
He found an article with my grandfather's name. This kind of crazy stuff. Anyway, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
So I'll be right
Wait.
That's another story.
Yeah, this is very
We left on the freight ship because in the middle of the night. It's a very supportive story.
yeah, unfortunately I'm not a professional.
Well, we know a lot of people. I didn't regain my citizenship.
Oh, okay.
So
I know, I always said, oh, these Portuguese people, I get you, you have such a maybe find anything in the day.
Well, it wasn't an inquisition, but when we applied, because my mother, her mother, was born in Corfu, and they were there for several hundred years. How did they get there? The last name is Agua. When we applied for Portuguese citizenship, so we went to get the Jewish community to approve it. What's 250 euros per person? It was 4 of us.
Okay.
It's okay. And he went like this real quickly. I said, thank you very much. May I ask you, why did you approve so quickly? Because the next step is to go to the Portuguese government. And he says, don't you know? No, what? He says, the chief rabbi. So it
That's
turns
why I
out.
told them, when I meet Sephardic people who connected to Portuguese, it's always very well organized. It's a dream for,
Or they lie well. Or they lie well.
That's also
it's almost like the Russians.
it also can do that. I really know people who find files in the
But the irony is, the Inquisition is, once you say you're going to become Christian, they say, okay, eat this bread with pork. And if you don't, they burn you.
But sometimes that's connected to conversion. It's connected to all kinds of
Yeah. Investigation. It's an investigation. And also during the 70s and 80s, a lot of Russians said they're now all in Bakhmut. They're all in Bakhmut.
Tell me, you know how many requests you received in Yom HaShoah? People are searching for the documents where we can find the news.
Right. Or some of them were and then denied it. I mean, it's
You know, our grandparents tried, my personal grandfather, he changed his ethnicity from Jewish to the Russian in order to survive.
Yes.
And after that, they had to find them.
how do you get it back? You know, and sometimes you're so afraid of that to go back. And do you know that 20 to 25% of Sephardic Jews in Spain, 25% of the Spanish population is Jewish.
Yeah, but you know, you also can speak about Moranos in Mexico.
Morocco and Egypt.
Yeah, exactly.
And Babylon, you know, I mean, we're far. But somehow, we our culture survives.
Yes.
In some variation.
Yes.
And I think the strongest thing is that, because I went to yeshiva in the United States, when I was younger, I was religious. I'm not that religious, but when you learn the Talmud, what does it teach you? To ask questions.
Yeah, but I can tell you that my husband, who was 2 years in yeshiva in Jerusalem, when he started to ask too many questions, they told him
Too much. Yeah, that's it. But that's okay.
That's why he just, how it's called in English, went down to religion.
Well, yeah, at a certain point, it's Emunah.
Exactly.
And it's not science. You know, you start thinking, what, Moses had a list, but how did he talk? So he got his brother. How did he go in to talk to Pharaoh? So
Don't be too clever.
you know, you don't ask too many questions. Things don't add up, you know. But it's more symbolic, and you have to
I
take.
agree, but that's why, I mean, we also had such experience, like, going a little bit lighter.
Yes. But the reality is, everyday life is a miracle.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, the fact that our bodies, our heart beats. How come? What does it stop? I mean, there's scientific reasons and all
Yeah,
that.
but anyway,
but the idea
I
of
also think, but I'm thinking about miracles when I see some circumstances with everything comes together and it's something very special.
yeah. But I think when you start to appreciate the simple things, you could build on that. It's every day is a miracle when you think about it. You know, and it doesn't mean it could be mundane, but still.
I'm trying to
you
be
know,
out of
but,
politics. It's very difficult in present day. But
think about it. For me, I was born in Alexandria, Egypt. I lived in Greece, Italy, France. I came here in the early 60s. I speak a few languages. I was head of production for Sesame Street. I became head of production. To me, it's a little miracle looking back. You know, now you could say, and I say luck. But luck and miracles and a little hard work.
exactly, luck doesn't come alone.
Even you here and in my view, I mean,
That's why I feel.
you know what I'm saying?
Exactly, because I told you that my staying in NYU, I was in a miracle because I was invited by the president of the and she's Jewish, amazing Jewish person. So I was for sure.
I got my master's there in 1975. That gives you an idea.
For sure I received it as something very miracle for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
You have kids?
Yeah, 2.
Good. How old are they?
19 and 15.
I have triplet boys. They're about to become 31 on April 18th.
Wow. Wow. In the beginning, I suppose it was difficult.
And that's my wife there.
Wow, she's a hero.
You know, I mean, life passes. So when you think about how things happen so quickly.
Yeah, oh, tell me.
Just,
I also think all the time about that. My children are supposed to have a summer holiday, but they could not because there were no flights. They canceled everything. No, you're doing it smaller and smaller.
Yeah, but then I'll never find it. I don't want to go by date.
Oh.
You know. Oh well. I wanted to show you a picture when they were born, but I'll get you one when we visited her father, who's 97, who did survive the Holocaust.
Where?
In Berlin. He left when he was 9. Yes, in 1938 they left. I'm getting old. There you go. Oh, they're old. Now they're old.
No, you just choose many at the same time.
There you go.
Wow.
Those are my kids.
Wow.
Just a couple of days ago, and he's 97, and he escaped Nazi Germany. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
then it becomes like you're on the defensive. My father didn't want me to be drafted, even though I went to college. I had to defer him.